Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. Starting a new week, Monday being a holiday. So happy Tuesday. We've got a ton to talk about around the world of the NBA. Keith, we've got a long weekend to catch up on. But I think we kind of have to start before we get into all of the basketball stuff that we would talk about. I think we kind of have to get into something that's obviously far more important than basketball, and that is unfortunately the passing of Bill Walton. Keith, I know obviously covering the Celtics, you've got a connection to him there, UCLA guy, so the Southern California roots. Obviously, I've got a connection there as well. But it's not just us that have this connection. It's the entire basketball world that has really been mourning the passing of Bill Walton. I mean, what an incredible person, what an incredible personality. He always brought so much light to every time that we saw him on TV or heard him calling a game. So much fun, and this is a big loss for the basketball community and beyond that we're going to be feeling for a long time. So, of course, rest in peace, Bill Walton. We had terrible news to start the day yesterday, and wanted to make sure that we started the show with this today.
Yeah, I think on the plus side of this, and there's no plus side of it, but the good thing, I guess, to see is how many amazing stories there were shared yesterday about Bill Walton, from people played with him, people worked with him, people just met him and talked to him. There was a story about how a guy met him, asked him, like, hey, is there a chance my dad picked you up as a hitchhiker one summer? And he was like, yeah, probably. And then they figured out, like, yeah, that did happen. Like, it's just like crazy stuff like that. And Dave Pasch, who is his longtime broadcast partner, he told a ton of really hilarious stories. And it's so cool when something like this happens and you get the just outpouring of love and affection for the person that we all get to see. Like it just tells you what a well-lived and well-loved life that they had. And clearly Bill Walton was that. And from basketball coverage, whether it be the NBA or NCAA, or just sometimes you talk about random games he saw other places, he loved basketball.
Yeah.
There was never anything negative. There was never any. Back in my day, if he started a story back in my day, it was going to be some long, crazy trip you were going to go on that was going to probably have you in tears laughing at some point. But it was never about comparing the players or anything like that. None of the stuff we see pretty much daily in coverage of basketball today. It was always lifting the game up and lifting those who play it up, and sharing that love of the game with people. So super cool to see all those stories come out yesterday. Wish we had been getting those stories 20 years from now, but it kind of is what it is. It's cancer is a terrible thing. It's something that we continue to fight in all its forms for all sorts of people around the world. But it's something I think we would have a hard time finding someone who hasn't been touched by cancer in their family or loved ones somewhere. And it just, it's one of those things where, it takes people from us way too early. And that's, a big part of why I believe it's really important to a couple of things. One, when and if you can, donate to causes that try to, find cures and solves for this horrible disease or set of diseases. And two, probably even more importantly than that, make sure the people you love know how much you love them when they're around. Make sure they know how much they mean to you. It's one of those things that can be really hard to tell people that sometimes, but it is really, really important to get that message to them when they're still here to hear it.
Yeah, that's a great point, Keith. And you just never know. You just never know. But rest in peace, Bill Walton. Obviously, tough way to certainly start out the week. But we will get into some basketball here. Let's get into a few topics. I guess let's get to the playoffs, Keith. And this will be a positive on your end. This is a crushing negative on my end. Your Celtics go to the finals. Keith, I was thinking about this earlier today. This season, for Lakers fans, has essentially played out like a disaster movie, like the movie Titanic, right? Where where there's some high points, there's some fun moments, draw me like your French girls and all that kind of stuff, right, is happening over the course of time. But then the whole time there's this ominous sense because the damn iceberg is sitting out there and there's this little green goon sitting on it. And that's where we're at now as the Celtics have now made it to the NBA finals. I know you have a slightly different perspective than I do on that.
Yeah, I would say we definitely have different perspectives on that. My version is the ship makes it in a port and everybody's happy and is thrilled with the new life and it makes many crossings across the Atlantic over the course of its life. I mean, I'm not gonna deny I'm super excited today.
Sure.
I'm not super excited. It's 9 days away. But hey, if that gets Kristaps Porzingis back on the floor, so be it. We'll take it. It's there's obviously been a lot of discussion and will continue to be about the path. I said my piece about that already. I don't really care. It doesn't matter. That's part of what you earn when you're in the 1 seed. One of the piece, I think it was Tim Legler said it, who he's awesome too, right? Because you don't get a lot of nonsense out of him. It's more just, hey, here's what I think. Here's what I saw. And I'm going to tell you that. One of the things I think it was him who said the other day, that's part of why maybe some teams should value the regular season more because you put yourself in a position to potentially have an easy path. And that's part of it. Now, of course, guys got hurt and there were upsets and everything else, but that is part of it. So I'm not going to deny it was easy. It was absolutely easy, but I also don't really care. They're in the finals, and that's all that matters. We'll see what happens tonight. Just to restate it here on this, I've said it several times on social media. Even if Dallas closes out tonight, the finals start on June 6th. There's no move update. There's not been a move update for several years now. They have locked into the finals dates because the TV partners pay an awful lot of money to have them when they want to have them on certain nights and all those things. So that's where it is. And then we'll preemptively say it. There's going to be a whole lot of complaining about they're not even traveling to the West Coast. Why are there 2 days between games? It's been that way again for years.
Yeah.
Outside, even in the bubble, they did it. They didn't travel anywhere.
They want to build the suspense and everything.
Yeah, exactly. And they, quite frankly, shows are over by then, right? So they're looking for primetime programming that people watch. So it is what it is. That's kind of how it goes. So, but we'll see what happens tonight. But super excited. That Celtics are back in the finals again.
The NFL takes a week off before the Super Bowl, right? I mean, it's the way that it goes. You spread things out a little bit more. You allow for more discussion, more conversation, more focus on the finals. And yes, it's going to be odd if we have a whole week, essentially a week plus of no basketball, even knowing what the finals are. But that's just the way that it goes sometimes. So I don't know. I'm not overly concerned about that. I think it's going to be a really interesting finals series, as you said. It's Celtics basically haven't played anybody yet in the playoffs, anybody of note, anybody of true like championship quality. And so it'll be interesting to see how do they adjust now playing against most likely the Dallas Mavericks. So I think it's fair to say like the Mavs would have kicked the crap out of the Pacers, out of the Cavs, out of the teams that the Celtics saw in their side of the playoffs. And a lot of teams in the West, I think, would have. But that's not the Celtics' fault, right? That's not Boston's fault for having that path. It's what happened. It's the current state of the Eastern Conference. It's a disaster movie of a conference. There's not much. There's the Celtics and then this kind of wasteland.
In fairness, sorry to cut you off, but like the Bucks should have been better. The Sixers should have been better. They just weren't. Like that's
for sure.
The reality. They just weren't. Like that's 100% true. And we've seen like teams that should, you can argue, still be there, like the Nets. All three of their stars are now playing for teams in the West. So I'm with you. Like just a mess of a conference and the way everything played out. And everything played out and fell Boston's way.
And some of it was certainly injury related, like you said. And I think the Sixers could bounce back. If the Sixers managed to get Paul George, okay, that bounces them back pretty quickly. There's a lot of these teams that can make moves. And I think the Pacers have gotten a lot of negative coverage and everything. And I've said I don't think they're truly a conference finals caliber team. That's not what they are. But they're very good. And I think they really I was amazed that they were able to make even a game of it without Tyrese Halliburton. I thought that was really impressive. And they're going to be off and running for next season. I think they're a team that can continue to grow. I think this was just maybe a year early in their process as they're getting better and better. I think they are going to be a good team in the long term. So now we're going to get a really interesting finals. And Keith, how important is it that the Mavs finish this out tonight in Game 4? And don't mess around here and get the Wolves done, because the Wolves are still saying, we believe we can come back and win this thing.
Which is what they should say, right? Because otherwise, why are we even playing the game? Just go home and call it a season. I think it's important, not because if they lose this game, they're going to lose the series. I'm not going to suggest that by any means. I think they've got the series won, but it's important because Luka is clearly, despite how incredible he's playing, he's dealing with some stuff. And I'm going to guess it's more than just the knee, because it looks like at times he's grabbing his back, he's grabbed at his elbow. I bet he's probably got 4 or 5 different things going on. And beyond that, Dirk Lively's now hurt. So get this over. Don't introduce another game with another potential injury for somebody else, or worsening of an injury or anything like that. Yeah, finish this off. Put your feet up for a few days and then start practicing and preparing for Boston, because that's, get it over with. There's no reason to play more, if you can't. Now, the Wolves are going to be desperate. I would expect they're going to throw everything they can into this and try to get the win. It's so funny. I think sometimes there's a world where it is jump on a team early when they're down 3-0, get them, start thinking about, all right, that's it. That's the season.
Vacation.
We're going on vacation. And they're also on the road, so really try to maybe finish them off that way. That could be a big thing.
I think a part of this that we have to talk about, as Stu the studio cat checks in here, we've got Maxi Kleber coming back, but Derek Lively going out. Keith, that was, there were some. So in last night's Pacers game, Pacers and Celtics, there were a couple of moments. There was the kick to the face of Peyton Pritchard. There was the whatever you want to call that, what Jaylen Brown did to CJ McCollum. Those were tough shots, but it wasn't anything. Oh, Stu is picking up things here for me.
Nice. Perfect.
Those were the problem is he picks up and destroys them rather than like put them away neatly. I gotta, I don't know how to train a cat, but but the shot that Derek Lively took was far scarier than I think anything that we had seen up to this point in the playoffs. I mean, getting hit a knee straight to the back of the head, the way that he did. I mean, there's a reason why strikes to the back of the head are illegal when you get into MMA and things like that, and why you're not supposed to throw knees at downed opponents, because of how absolutely dangerous it can be. Sounds like Derek Lively's going to be out for Game 4. Maxi Kleber coming back. That'll be an interesting addition to the Mavs, I think. Adding Maxi Kleber's 3-point shooting from the center position. They can play small if the situation calls for it. But boy, do they need Derek Lively back and healthy. And I think the important thing here is healthy first and foremost. It sounds like he's going to be okay, but that was certainly a scary moment. And the Mavs are going to have to find a way to get it done without him. And I don't know what level Kleber is at. So that's going to put a lot of pressure on Daniel Gafford to really step up big tonight.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think what happens here is Gafford needs to be big. Dwight Powell gave them some minutes, because it's awesome that Maxi Kleber is back, but you need to be realistic that you're trying to work him back into the fold and just see what he can give you. I don't know that you could expect him to come out and play 20 minutes tonight and be awesome. Maybe he will be. I don't know. I haven't seen anything of what he looks like or anything, but this I think is good that they're going to get him in there, knock some of that rust off and get him moving towards the finals. But yeah, it's Gafford's game. You can't get in foul trouble. He's got to stay solid on that end. I thought he had some absolute ridiculous plays at the end of Game 3.
Oh my!
The block shot and then that dunk, like that dunk was that was just unreal.
That was insane.
He was up there. He threw that thing down. Like it's funny. It's one of those ones where it's like blocking a dunk feels almost like, hey, please try to break my arm, because when a guy's coming down that hard, like That's crazy. So yeah, man, that was just a great catch and finish and everything. So I think Gafford's got it in him, but you're right. There's a lot of pressure on him tonight to just be really, really good because he doesn't have his running mate who, where if he's a little off, he gets in foul trouble. All right, plug Lively in and Lively will do his thing for 25, 30 minutes if we need to.
Yeah.
So it's a balance. But yeah, man, getting Kleba back, huge for Dallas for sure.
Yeah, and they've got to get through this game as unscathed as possible, and then rest up and get ready for the finals if they can get it done. We'll see. Wolves and the Wolves have been a very tough opponent. It's not like these games have been blowouts. This has been a pretty actually close series, even though it's 3-0. All right, Keith, let's go here. Let's talk a little bit about the Cavs. I guess we'll start here. The Cavs are optimistic about retaining Donovan Mitchell, which I mean that's a good sign when you're hearing this kind of report coming out right now that they're optimistic about. That tells you that they're hearing some things, right? They're feeling like they've got a pretty good shot at keeping him, that if they give him that max extension offer, that he will indeed sign it. But what's interesting about this, and I kind of love this from a coverage perspective, is that we're either talking about Donovan Mitchell trades, or as soon as we're not talking about Donovan Mitchell trades, we're talking about Darius Garland and maybe Jared Allen trades, because we know that the second Mitchell signs that contract, it's going to be followed. At least the rumor is it's going to be followed by a trade request from Darius Garland. So how do you see this whole situation playing out?
Yeah, it is kind of funny that we're in a spot where the Cavs are picking between them in some sense, right? If everything is to believe that Garland wants out if Mitchell stays. And let's be very clear, none of the reporting has been that Darius Garland doesn't like Donovan Mitchell or has any problems with him. I think it's just he is more of a we're not a good fit in the backcourt together. And I'm not going to argue that either. That was the concern when they got Mitchell is you're playing two small guards. All right, you've got the bigs. They'll clean up for those guys. But I think we've seen Darius Garland's not a great off-ball guy. He needs to probably be somewhere where he's just more running pick and roll. Ball is in his hands more, and he's not having to play as much off another guy. So, yeah, my guess is if the Cavs can commit to Donovan Mitchell and get him to sign an extension this summer, and it's important, again, to know he can't necessarily get a lot more money if he doesn't extend. He's never going to get Supermax eligible on an extension because he was traded to Cleveland. So we're not like waiting for that to play out like we have been in other situations. So I think if you could get him to sign an extension, you do it. He's the better player of the two. That is true. So I think you do it. You take Donovan Mitchell and you then start to reorient the entire roster around him, whatever that means. And then Darius Garland off to wherever you can go. And that should return you either players who can help in this rebuild of the roster around Mitchell or assets that you can maybe use. I think I'd lean more towards I want players for Darius Garland than just cap flexibility, tax flexibility, and draft picks. I want guys who can play because if I'm re-signing Donovan Mitchell, my intention is to be very good right now.
Exactly. Yeah, they've got to be good right now. If you look at Darius Garland's usage, it has dropped, but in consecutive seasons, it's dropped since acquiring Donovan Mitchell. And Keith, this is one of those situations where, you know, it's kind of interesting because I see some people trying to paint Darius Garland as the bad guy here, as like the malcontent in this situation. But don't teams do this exact same thing? Like where they look and they go, oh, well, this pairing simply isn't working. Let's break it up. I mean, how long did we hear, oh, the Blazers need to break up CJ McCollum and Dame Lillard? Or, I mean, my Lakers, does Austin Reeves and D'Lo, does that backcourt really work? Or do they need to trade? One of the teams are constantly making those kind of evaluations. So if a player is saying, you know what, I just don't think this is the best fit for me, and so I'd like to be moved on somewhere else where my game can flourish in this way, I don't think Darius Garland should be the bad guy in that scenario because he's saying, look, this is what I need to do in order to reach the level that I need to get to. And I think the reality is that when we look at opportunity in the NBA, and if you look at, hey, I've got a chance to put up real numbers, I've got a chance to really be the guy, I need to be in this environment in order to reach my full potential. Not only is there that constant drive, that desire to be the best you possibly can be, and so you've got that inherent need to be the best version of yourself, but also financially, you could potentially have a lot of money on the line both in terms of future contracts, endorsements, everything else, your star status in the NBA, based on whether or not you can get to that level of play. So I don't fault Darius Garland in this situation. If he just says, look, I like Donovan Mitchell, but I don't think that this is the best partnership, and I'd like to find something somewhere else. That's fine. And honestly, that may be in the Cavs' best interest as well.
Yeah, because this is not a situation. The classic situation is player has become disgusted with their
Yes.
situation with the team, right? It's I don't like the way you've built the roster. I don't like the city. I don't like the guys I'm playing with. I don't like the coach. Whatever it is, get me out of here. Then I get it when fans are like, F you, dude. Like, then take a hike. We don't want you either, right? That's
Right.
generally how it turns around. But it's weird. Almost any other situation, I'm all right if the player's like, I want to play more, or it's just not a great fit for me, or I want to be somewhere else. Like, I have no issue. And you're absolutely right. Unless a team is making a truly like, what in the world is this trade? Where like we're all like, what a terrible trade. Or they're trading a like beloved franchise player. There's never any backlash on a team making a trade. It's almost always, well, that's what teams do. They got to try to improve. But when a player wants to improve their spot, it's for some reason seen as bad. It's that age old labor versus employer, right? Like it's that whole thing. And for me, I don't know. I kind of unless it gets really twisted and it's like, well, wait a minute, they did everything for you and now you're asking out. Then I don't like those situations. But the one like this, I'm fine with it. No
Yeah.
problem at all if that's where this goes for Darius Garland. I have no real issue, if he decides he wants out and that's where it goes, and then it becomes on the Cavs. Get it right. You got to nail the trade because you got to be in the right spot with the return. Otherwise, this could have long term implications where then it's going to be how long is Donovan Mitchell happy there if you don't get the trade right.
And we're going to talk about a potential trade destination for Darius Garland in just a moment. But before we leave Cleveland here, Kenny Atkinson appears to be the front runner for the Cavs head coaching job. There's been a few other names associated with that job, James Borrego being one. But it sounds like Kenny Atkinson is probably the way this is going to ultimately play out. If that's the way they go, do you like that hire for Cleveland?
I don't dislike it. I think it's probably good. I think Kenny Atkinson, at least the picture we've all been painted for us or painted ourselves, is that he's better with a developmental team than he is with a team that's trying to win. But we also haven't really seen him for very long with a team that's trying to win. And that Nets situation was such an odd one after they added the stars that I don't really know if he's a good winning coach in that sense. So I'd like to find out, right? It'd be good to find out. He seems to have a good relationship with Jared Allen and Karis LeVert, and other players seem to really hold him in pretty high regard. So I think it's okay. I don't have any real issue with the hire if that's the direction they go.
Yeah, you don't know. Is it Kenny Atkinson is a developmental coach because that's what he is, or Kenny Atkinson is more of a developmental coach because that's just the situations that he's been in? He hasn't really had an opportunity to take a winning team. So I think that's a fair point there. As far as the trade potential here, the Pelicans, one of the teams that are rumored to be interested in some guards. This is DeJounte Murray, Darius Garland, guys they're looking at. What do you for the Pelicans side of this? Is this goodbye CJ McCollum? Is this a Brandon Ingram trade? How do they get either one of these moves done?
Cue that message, that meme with the little girl. Why not both? Right?
Why not both?
I don't know, right? Like it could be.
Sure they
I
wouldn't
mean,
mind.
I don't think they're going to go get 2 point guards. I think we've seen that gets a little messy. I think there's a couple things at play here. I think they realize CJ McCollum, for all that he is good at, he's not really a point guard. I think he's much more of a combo guard. I think in an ideal world, CJ McCollum is playing off ball and then can slide over to play like start off ball and then play almost like the backup point guard minutes in moments. So he's still getting his 30 plus minutes per game, but then he moves over. I think the Ingram, I'm starting to move him way up on the list of guys I feel very confident are going to get traded this summer, just because it just feels like it's run its course there in New Orleans, where it
Hmm.
feels like we're kind of down to the point of, all right, this is Zion's team, obviously. They've got wings coming out of their ears with Herb Jones and Trey Murphy and Najee Marshall. They want to try to keep him. Like, those guys can all play. So I think we're in a world where, do we still need Brandon Ingram if we can turn him into something better? Because I think they would rather have a point guard and maybe a center than have Ingram on a new contract where he's extended and also having to extend Trey Murphy. So, and I got it right that time. I said Trey Murphy. I didn't say Trey Murphy. Proud of myself.
That's right.
So I think that's where they'd rather be. Let's try to get in that direction
Hmm.
of, let's try to move that way, because I think that's probably what they need to do just for roster balance purposes.
So if we're talking, you're going to move McCollum and Ingram, that's almost $70 million in salaries going out. I mean, are we talking one big super trade? Are we talking multiple trades? Like, I know, and I saw your face there. It will be tough to send out $70 million in salaries
Sure.
and make something work, particularly when we get into the first tier apron stuff now, where we're aggregating players. I'm sorry, second tier aggregating players in a trade would trigger a hard cap at the second tier. That can be a complicating factor too for teams. It can get a bit tricky when you're trying to do all of this stuff. And again, if you're taking back more than 100% of the salary in a trade, that would also trigger a hard cap at that first year apron at that 179 million. So it gets pretty complicated now when you're trying to make stuff like this work. But I think there would be a lot of interest in Brandon Ingram. I don't know how much interest there would be in CJ McCollum on his own on this current number at 33 million this season. It drops for next season 30. I'm talking about this coming season, the 2024-2025 season, and then 25-26 it drops to just shy of $31 million. So I don't know what kind of interest there would be in CJ. I would have to think the market would be not quite as kind to a CJ McCollum trade as they might be for Brandon Ingram. And even BI, the injury history, I think, will give teams pause there. So I'm really curious to see what the Pelicans can turn these guys into. I think the one thing they can't do is turn these guys into draft capital or whatever future stuff. I think they need to win now. We're going to rebuild this team on the fly. We're going to trade these guys out, and we're going to get pieces that are ready to go because we've got Zion, and let's hit the ground running. I think that's the path they need to take rather than let's just acquire future capital.
Yeah, you gave me a lot to respond there. So
Sorry, that was my
no, that's okay.
long-winded.
You pulled a me. I'm usually the one who talks for 5 minutes uninterrupted. It doesn't let you get a word in. I think the first part is, you're absolutely right. It gets very tricky when you're talking that volume of salary, that level of players. But David Griffin has pulled off some pretty complicated trades in the past. So we remember the whole that trade where it was Steven Adams was in it, and Valanciunas, and that turned into I think in the end, like a 4-team, like multiplayer trade with multiple sign-in trades involved and all kinds of crazy madness that were in that whole thing. I think the Bucks might have been involved in that too at one point. Like that whole trade was so complicated and crazy. So
It's like he's just doing it just to see if he can at that point.
he might, yeah, he might, right? So this one could be, there's a couple ways this could play out. You could see it's functionally two different trades, but we sandwiched them together for just functionality reasons in a trade. But it's really Ingram just going here for this and McCollum's going here for this. The other thing, which is probably very highly more likely, is one of the two doesn't get traded at all. And I think you're right. I think it's more likely to be McCollum, because what you have to be careful of is, if you have a team that values Brandon Ingram, you don't want to get in a position where it is, hey, but we also want you to take McCollum, because that could pull Ingram's value down
Sure.
into a place where now the trade balance just gets a little too far off in the other direction. Or you may be better off just saying, hey, let's try to trade them both individually and let's find homes for the two of them. Because there is somewhere where it is, what other team's going to take the two of them on without saying, are we just the Pelicans now, which is a good team, but not a great team? Like why did we do this? So I think it's more likely Ingram goes, McCollum probably stays. But there's a lot of optionality this summer for this Pelicans team. And really, their kind of big holes are a long-term point guard and then something at the center position. Because right now, the only real center on the roster is Larry Nance, and he's much more of a backup 4/5 than he is a starting 5. So you're just in a position where you've got to figure some stuff out, and your resources are not limited because you can make these trades. Your resources are kind of limited in the sense of you don't want to you can't just go out and buy your way out of this by signing players and stuff. You have to be very smart here because they're starting to work up against the tax and then those aprons, which to your other point can be made very tricky to work around based on how you structure trades and the like.
Yeah. So right now, again, over here on Spot Track, active cap, they're at about 157 million if we round up. So you do start, you're not there, but I mean, 179 million in the NBA, you can spend your way there in the blink of an eye. And next thing you know, you're dealing with an issue with that first tier apron, and you've got some issues there to keep an eye on. So it's not an easy spot to be in. I don't even know what Brandon Ingram's market is going to look like because of the injury history that he's got. But and also a team getting him would probably want to keep him. He's on a $36 million expiring contract. Yeah. So then do you want to, like, what does Brandon Ingram want on his next contract? And if you're going to trade him, just to pick a random team, if you're going to trade him to the Magic, say, do the Magic want to give Ingram what he wants on his next contract? That's going to matter in these trade negotiations too. So there's a lot of moving parts here. David Griffin does not have an easy job this summer. Let's sum it up with that. It's going to be very interesting to see how he navigates all of this, because these decisions are going to ultimately chart the course for the Pelicans moving forward into this, whatever this next iteration of the team looks like. It's going to be built upon what do they do with Brandon Ingram, what do they do with CJ McCollum, and how do they build this thing out around Zion Williamson, around Trey Murphy, around these other pieces. I think there's something really interesting here in New Orleans, but as you said, they have to make the right moves with BI, with CJ McCollum, if they're going to get to that next level. And so that's going to fall on David Griffin. But no pressure, no pressure. But man, this is going to be a big summer for New Orleans ahead.
Absolutely. And tying the last two teams we talked about, the Pelicans and the Cavs, together a little bit. One, David Griffin for the Pelican side, he's doing this without his top lieutenant. Trajan Langdon's not there anymore. He's off to run the Pistons. So that's part one. Then part two, I've seen a lot of people go to, we'll just swap Ingram for Garland. And honestly, my gut reaction whenever I see things like that is normally I'm like, no, I don't like this.
Who says no?
But I actually don't hate it for either team. The Cavs I'm a little more shaky on, because then I'm committing to a core of Ingram, Mitchell, and an extended Evan Mobley. It's not bad, but is that enough? Like, that's the question I'm going to ask. Or are we kind of turning into Pelicans slightly more east and north? Like is that where what we're becoming? Are we becoming a different version of what the Pelicans were, where we have the talented big, we have the wing who's hurt a lot, and then we have a guard who's pretty good, but maybe not all the way where we want him to be? I don't know. So that's interesting. I even saw a couple people suggest, well, why don't they all just be really smart and do Ingram and McCollum for Allen and Garland and just be done with it, because McCollum already knows how to play with another ball dominant guard. He did it for years and years and years. Allen seems like they want to move him. The Pelicans need a center. That one gets a lot harder because of the salaries involved and all the other stuff with that. But I don't immediately hate that out of hand either, which is very not where I usually am with this made up trade stuff. Usually I'm a lot more skeptical and I dislike them than I do like them. So, but really, I think these are going to be two teams we're going to be covering a lot over the next month leading up to the start of free agency.
Who would you rather have, Garland or Ingram? If you got to just straight up, just pick between the two.
Garland.
That's where I'm leaning to.
Yeah,
I think I'm leaning good. The injury history is getting me.
Yeah. Plays a position where you need to have somebody really, really good. And it's Not that wings aren't important. They obviously are. They maybe have never been more important in the NBA, but I feel like you can get one. For the Pelicans, at this point, I would much rather have Garland. I'd rather have him running my offense, extend Murphy, move forward, than I'd rather
Off
have
you go.
Ingram.
All right. There are going to be some teams to watch there. Let's go here. Lonzo Ball had a meniscus transplant. Did you see the video of him dunking? That went out. It was late. It was
I
like
was
last week.
nervous.
I was too.
I didn't
Like when
like
he's
it.
landing, I kind of held my breath a little bit on the landing, but he looks like he's okay. Now, this was not he's, head at the rim like we've seen him in years gone by, but still, that was good to see him jumping and dunking a ball, and he intends to play for the Bulls this coming season. So hopefully he can get back. But yeah, he had a meniscus transplant. Was the surgery that he had done. So we'll see. Hopefully he can get things back on track here.
Yeah, and in no way was he placing any blame, I don't think, on anybody the way I read the comments. But he said this goes all the way back to when he tore the meniscus with the Lakers. That he's been having problems that entire time. So that's a long time to be in a not a great place. And then as he details in the article, which I do suggest people go Google and find, or I think he maybe said all this on a podcast, but there's an article that summed it up, whatever it was. He gets pretty into detail about how bad his knee was. Like it was worse than like bone on bone, because bone was starting to wear away, which is like that just sounds awful. So we've said it all along. We hope he can make it back. They give you the Bulls. It's whatever he can give us. That's icing on the cake, and we'll move forward from there. And we just go. But for now, I'm still going to kind of continue to operate as he's Lonzo Ball's expiring contract, and we'll figure it out if he can get back or not.
All right. So on the TV deal front, the idea that maybe inside the NBA isn't dead. That Warner Brothers might match the Amazon offer, but I know, Keith, you and I were talking a little bit before we came on here. This gets tricky in terms of what is really matching compared to what Amazon can offer. It gets a little bit tough, but apparently this whole thing is not done as far as Amazon getting the NBA. It feels like there's a fight coming here, Keith. Like this is going to be contested regardless of which way it goes.
Yeah, and there's also a thing that went out there where I don't think it was TMZ got Adam Silver somewhere and said, "Hey, is TNT out and inside the NBA is gone?" And he's like, "No." Adam Silver said, "No, they're not. We're still negotiating. Nothing's been finalized." So maybe there's a world where TNT still says, "Hey, we're in for just Thursday nights," or whatever package they dream up. Maybe that's where it comes together. The match stuff is really interesting, and you're absolutely right. It sounds like by people who are way smarter than we are on this are written about and reported on. Sounds like there is a disagreement on what matching means, and that's going to be a legal fight. Like there's going to be lawyers involved, as Andrew Brand is fond of saying on Twitter. There will be lawyers. Like there's going to be, and part of what it is the NBA has said, you matching the NBC offer, even if you pay the same amount, you're not really matching because you don't have a over-the-air channel like NBC does, where
Right.
NBC is going to put games on NBC. They're also going to have games on cable, probably on streaming. They're going to offer us exactly what you can and more. So it's not just about the money. So if you want to match, you have to offer us even more with that. Now, maybe they're going back to saying to the Amazon offer, well, wait a minute, they only have streaming. We at least have this linear cable channel with TNT. We can do this. Plus, we have TBS, we have True TV. They're doing these alt casts. We can do what they can do. Plus, we have this to offer. So maybe we can offer on that instead and keep Amazon from being the partner. But my guess is this is either going to be bye-bye TNT under Warner Brothers Discovery, or it's going to be TNT comes back in with another package, and we have 4 partners that are broadcasting NBA games. That's it, but that's just a guess. I clearly don't know that, but it just seems like we're pretty far down the road on some of this other stuff for it to get switched up now.
Yeah, and again, we've said this a bunch, but from the consumer side, I hope games aren't spread out even more than they are now. Like I would like one central place to go watch all the games, but doesn't seem like my dream is going to be happening anytime soon. We're
Yeah.
going to be finding all these different places, different portals to watch the games through, and that's the way we're until ultimately they're all going to get bundled together in this thing that we're going to call cable. It's this futuristic idea that
Yeah.
we're going to bundle everything together, and we'll be, of course, right back where we started.
I I I mean, there's a world where I just like, I don't know. Maybe we'll live long. You'll probably live longer than me, so you have a better chance than I do. But maybe there's a world where I just think NBA, and then like something turns on, like and then I'm watching NBA games, and
Oh yeah,
maybe that's all it takes. Like, but that's like Simpsons level technology where it was. Remember they plugged in a thing, and then people were like, "This is kind of how like the very I don't want to say it because it'll go off and want me to talk to it, but the
right.
dot and all that stuff work, like which is why right Simpsons predicts all. That's the one thing I think we've learned. So
Isn't
here we
that
go.
what got the Riddler in trouble in Batman Forever? Was he had the device that plugged into people's brains and allowed them to watch whatever was on their minds or something like that?
It might be, yeah. It could be. I mean, that's like a key plot device in the with the Kingsman movie too, where it's
Oh yeah,
uh, with the cell phone signal sets
that's
everybody
right.
makes them all go crazy. I love those movies. Those are underrated movies.
They're
That
so
aren't talked
outlandish and over the
about.
top, but they know they are like that's exactly what they're trying
Yep.
to be is and they just embrace it, which is it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Those are ones when if I'm like flipping around and I have like an hour to kill and one of them's on, I'm like, I'm gonna watch this because it's gonna be some ridiculous over the top action that I know I'll enjoy. So yeah, I don't want to spoil it. I mean, I know it's like a decade old movie now, but
Yeah,
people can go catch up on the Kingsman and let us know.
for sure.
Fun
All right.
franchise.
We've got a couple more things to get into. Mike Brown and the Kings paused their extension talks, which is interesting. I do wonder how much the Mike Budenholzer contract at over 10 million has that now set the market. And I don't know that that's what's happening in this situation here, but I wonder if there's teams that are a little hesitant to hit that mark. Something to consider. But Mike Brown and the Kings, despite the success they've had, look like they're not any closer to getting a deal done. And we're in the same spot with Ty Lue and the Clippers. No deal done there either. There's also rumors that the Clippers don't want to give Paul George a full max deal. They want to keep him more in line with Kawhi's contract, and that could present some problems. Maybe an opportunity for the 76ers. So a lot of this stuff, though, Keith, this is the kind of stuff that can get done once there is that deadline coming up of the new season starting and all that sort of stuff. When we talk about transferring over into July, that can be part of it. But interesting to note that here we've got, in this case, the Kings coaching situation, the Clippers coaching situation, kind of in flux, where the team and the coach don't see eye to eye on the numbers.
Yeah, I gotta wonder with Mike Brown too. Is maybe some of it the years involved? Maybe they're looking
Sure.
at, hey, you were great 2 years ago. You got us to the playoffs again, and then we backslid a little bit this year. And maybe they want to they don't want to lock in, right? 4, 5, 6 years, whatever it is they're looking for in this kind of a situation. So I don't know what's caused it. I would rather see it get solved and fixed because I think Mike Brown's a good coach who's done better than a lot of people have with the Kings in recent memory. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. I will say this on the Paul George stuff too. I starting to feel like Paul George may not be signed when free agency starts, and that's going to be then we're going to have some fun waiting for 6 o'clock because
Fireworks.
he's not going to be on the board very long. I don't think if he does become a free agent.
And if he leaves, that will be the kind of whoa, what like
Yep.
that. It'll be that kind of big Woj bomb of a report. If it's Paul George is joining the 76ers or whatever, that's going to be that'll be a big one.
And that sets off like the dominoes or the chain reaction, right? Where it's like, oh, here we go. Now there's a bunch of stuff that could
Yep.
change if that's how that goes down.
What was the last one? Because we all kind of knew Jalen Brunson was going to the Knicks. What was the last big free agent signing like that where it went, whoa, where we were so surprised and it caught us off guard? That was like a big time player. It's been a
Yeah.
while, I feel like.
Was it maybe Kawhi and PG to the Clippers in the first place?
Maybe. But what
I mean,
was
it
that,
feels like
5
that
years
was
ago?
forever ago, but that was not like So it feels like that was like a decade ago because we had COVID in the middle there, and
Sure.
that's ruined all sense of time. But like it was, I don't know, maybe I'd have to go back and look. I'd have to go back and look at like the big movement pieces. We've had trades for sure.
Trades for sure, but free
signings,
agency
yeah, maybe
been different.
maybe it was the Kawhi one because that was certainly a thing. Then that was that's a night I'll never forget for sure with Chris Haynes throwing my laptop in my backpack and saying we got to get out of there because there's a literal earthquake happening at Summer League. And I was like, what is going on? And he's like, it's an earthquake. Look up. And like the lights are swinging and everything. And he's literally packing my bag for me and saying, we gotta go. Because this dumb East Coast kid is like, yeah, this idiot East Coast kid who's never really been through a real earthquake before is like, oh, that's interesting. Like the whole building's moving. And he's like, no, that means we leave.
That means it's time to go, man.
Yeah. He literally reached over, closed my laptop. I don't even know if he knew it was my backpack and then just stuffed it in. He's like, we have to go get out of the building. So
get to the chopper.
Thanks for taking care of
me. All right. Let's finish with this. Evan Fournier wants an NBA contract rather than a return to Europe. Duh. Of course, right? Yeah. I mean, I guess there are some players who, European players who come over to the NBA. They say, you know what, this isn't for me, and they decide they want to go back. That's happened.
Yeah, Nikola Mirotic did that, and Nemanja Bjelica chose that path as well. So
yeah,
Fournier will finish his career in Europe. I feel fairly confident on that. But yeah, I think you'd rather play in the NBA, and someone will sign him. I don't think Evan Fournier is completely done, but if you need 15, 20 minutes a night of shooting and scoring off your bench on a far more reasonable contract than what he has right now for that role, sure, 5, 6, maybe even 10 million a year. I don't have a huge issue with that.
Yeah, you can do worse. All right. I think that gets us through the day and gets us caught up from the weekend. Everybody, I hope that you do subscribe to the channel. If you're not a subscriber yet, don't forget to turn on those notifications as well. And then check out the description down below. I'll put a link to the Basketball Bulletin, our Substack, basketballbulletin.substack.com. Go check that out as well. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.